At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
What up, everybody? It's a Sunday. It's a sports Sunday on Westwood One Sports, and I can't wait for tomorrow. I know we're sitting here on a Sunday, but tomorrow, Game 3 of the NBA Finals, I'm jazzed up for it. I slept on Game number 2, the ending of it. It was a brutal ending for the San Antonio Spurs. I don't think anybody's going to deny that. And I slept on that. And then yesterday I thought this whole thing out, slept on it again. And I think San Antonio's turning this thing around. I think they're going to find a way to turn it around. Maybe not to fully win the series, but this series is going at least 6 or 7. I've listened to everybody over the last 36, 48 hours attempt to write off San Antonio completely. The Knicks in 4. I've seen the thing on social media. My bagels are Jewish, my mayor's Muslim, my Christian Dior, Knicks in 4. I've seen it. You've seen it. It's like catchy, right? It's kind of like that bing bong thing that New York falls in love with catchphrases. It's something I've noticed over my life. 30 years, 31 years now on the planet. The city of New York loves himself a catchphrase. And I've seen all of that. But I go back to the way that game ended. And there's no way in my mind that doesn't leave some sort of imprint on San Antonio. And not an imprint in the way where you pack it up and go home, but an imprint in the way where you make an adjustment, like a real adjustment, something that drastically shifts the way that you approach game number 3, especially considering the magnitude of the environment. You're going into hostile territory. I mean, Madison Square Garden is going to be packed to the gills, thousands of dollars to get into the stadium. A who's who of individuals are going to be courtside. It is going to be a madhouse, and I don't think it matters one single bit. Victor Wembanyama has an opportunity to shut a lot of people up. It's funny to see how the narratives can swing about a player in a very, very small window, the way that they have been with Wembanyama. And I'm not going to sit here and defend that final possession. That turnover sucked. The bouncing the ball off the back of your guard, that was awful. I mean, that's like textbook basketball 101. You should know what a plan is when you're pushing the ball. That's on Castle. That's on Wemby. Even to a small extent, that's on Mitch Johnson. There was no plan there. There was no decisiveness there from Victor Wembanyama. There was too much kind of, whatever happens there from Stephon Castle. You can't turn your back to the ball. You're the guard. So there's so many things that took place on that specific possession. But there's just this feeling that I have that it's going to be all gravy for the Spurs in game number 3. That for the first time this series, we are going to see a dominant Victor Wembanyama, like what we saw against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, he's going up against a far better team from a strength standpoint. Oklahoma City had Chet guarding his ass. Look, man, Chet ain't doing much. I see him, you see him. Maybe he got some secret slender dude strength in there. I doubt it. That dude was getting bullied left, right, and center by Wemby. They had to put Hartenstein on him. And then Hartenstein started to get bullied. Then they put Caruso on him. Caruso started to get bullied. Everybody was getting bullied by Victor Wembanyama. I would be stunned if he does not find a way to impose his will over Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns. I just don't see a reality where that happens. Because at the very least, somebody got to get in the ear of a guy that has the potential to be one of the greatest ever in Wemby. He has all the skill set. The height, that's God-given. The ability to play, to shoot, to dribble, to rebound, to block shots. He has everything. You build a perfect player. You build a my player on NBA 2K. You have built Victor Wembanyama. I just cannot imagine that someone has not gotten in his ear and told him, hey, if we're going to lose this series, we better lose it with you taking 30 shots. We are not trying to lose this thing because somebody else is going to carry us. We're not trying to lose this thing because you want to be team player all of a sudden. Somebody got to tell him, you got to go be a jackass out there. You got to be a bully out there. Be mean. You can be mean to Karl Anthony Towns. You can be mean to Mitchell Robinson. He needs to go out there and reverse this prophecy that has come to fruition with Karl Anthony Towns. I have long, I'm Denton Day. You can find me on Twitter at the Denton Day. I have long been a hate watcher of Karl Anthony Towns. Since his inception into the NBA. Loved him in college. Got to the NBA, and he was tasked. He was dubbed. It's unfair to him, but this is the reality. This is the nature of the beast. He was dubbed as a future NBA MVP, and I hate that. I can't stand that. Anytime somebody's dubbed like that, there's a special level of criticism that I watch them with, and I watch Karl Anthony Towns. And in the beginning, he was figuring it out. The guy didn't just come in here immediately hating. Maybe inception of the NBA was not the right way. At least I gave him the first year. I have a heart. I gave him the first year. And then I started watching him in year number 2. And I'm like, hey, man, you're big as hell. You should be playing with your back to the basket. And he ain't do it. And then Jimmy Butler came in. And Jimmy Butler said, hey, man, you're big as hell. You should be playing with your back to the basket. And he ain't do it. And he gets traded to New York. A bunch of people in New York say, hey, man, you're big as hell. You should be playing with your back to the basket. And he still didn't do it. He wanted to be the best shooting big man of all time. For whatever that means. He wanted to be the best shooting big man of all time. Everybody wants to be Dirk and Kevin Durant. Nobody wants to be Shaq anymore. Nobody wants to be a guy that bullies you on the inside. I don't even need him to be Shaq. He can be Zach Randolph for all I care. Just more skilled. Just be down there and treat yourself like a human wrecking ball. You're going to get foul calls. You're going to get to the line. You're skilled enough to make people actually pay when you get to the line. Like you could foul Shaq all the time. He ain't making no free throws. You're so good as a big man as a shooter. You're getting fouled. You're going to the free throw line, and that's 3 points right there. They put you at the free throw line 10, 12 times. That's 10 points. That's a win for your team, and he never did it. And I've always hated him for that. Because he has everything that you want, and yet finally, in the biggest 2 games of his career, the prophecy has been fulfilled because Karl Anthony Towns, for the first time, is playing like a guy that knows he can be physical. It's like he's been holding this hostage since he walked through the door of the NBA, saying, eventually, when I get to the NBA Finals, I'm finally going to be this physical monster down low that everybody has been wanting me to be. It's a ballsy thing to do. I mean, he did play for the Knicks for such a long time, and the Minnesota Timberwolves during his time. Those are not franchises that you would think would get to the NBA Finals, but he saved it for the perfect moment. And I want Victor Wembanyama to uncoil that prophecy at the seams. Cat right now is a co-favorite to win Finals MVP with Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson is still being gifted by the books because the expectation is that in one of these games, he is going to go nuclear, go for like 35, maybe goes for 35 and 12, going to have a couple of clutch buckets that are really memorable. I mean, that's the one thing right now. It doesn't really feel like there's been massively memorable moments for Karl Anthony Towns. He's played really well. He's played really efficiently, but like your massive memorable moment can't be a great dunk in the third quarter. That needs to be something in the fourth quarter. And the guy that's always going to be in a position to be more impactful in quarter number 4 is going to be Jalen Brunson. But Cat is right now a co-favorite for Finals MVP, and I need Victor Wembanyama. I need Victor Wembanyama to punish him for it. I need him to. I need Victor Wembanyama. I haven't placed any bets yet, but I've been thinking. I'm hammering something with Victor Wembanyama to score at least 30 points. What I need to figure out is, do I talk myself into Victor Wembanyama going for 35 or going for 30? Because my expectation is that in game number 3, he's going to be taking a bajillion shots. And I think he's going to throw his body into the wind. I almost need him, Victor Wembanyama, to be a little reckless. Throw your body into the massive humanity that occupies the painted area. In game number 2, at one point, I think it was Stephon Castle. At one point, Stephon Castle threw Victor Wembanyama a lob, and he faded away. Wemby did. He tried to catch a lob as he was fading away from the basket, and that wasn't like a thing where his momentum took him away from the basket. It's not like he was running one way, the lob was a little behind him, and he did his best, but he was fading away. He just couldn't do it. No, the lob was perfect. In the regular season, he dunks that. Against OKC, he dunks it. Portland, he dunks it. But for whatever the reason was, because game number 2, the Knicks got in his head, he's doing this fadeaway bit. You can't do the fadeaway bit. You're Victor Wembanyama. I need him to be that. Look yourself in the mirror. There needs to be a guru in San Antonio. Surely there is, right? I mean, they got Popovich. This dude hangs out with monks. He's praying with nuns before the game. I mean, this dude is bringing the world together. The world religions are coming together to support Victor Wembanyama. Everybody is rooting for this dude. Somebody needs to put some 1990s slightly ridiculous motivational guru that you see on a infomercial or one of those 30-minute paid programs locally that airs at midnight that you kind of think is a massive scam artist. Somebody needs to put one of them dudes in the ear of Victor Wembanyama and just have him convinced that he can run through a wall. Because if you can run through a wall, you can run through Karl Anthony Towns. I promise you that. He ain't as sturdy as a wall. So I have really high expectations for what we're going to end up seeing tomorrow night in game number 3. I do love the way that this has played out, the series itself, from the element of fun. I was watching some of the press conferences today, and we got a little bit of audio that I'm going to queue up for you in a moment from these press conferences. But I was watching these press conferences, and there might be a few people over the next few hours that are going to take to social media and kind of lambast the NBA for allowing a Fat Joe in the press availability, for allowing Giddings in the press availability. Ben Stiller had himself a media pass, and largely, for those that care, media passes are not always the easiest thing to get. There are certain teams and certain sports that are a little bit more stingy when it comes to allowing certain people to get media passes. But the idea of Fat Joe sitting at a press conference is hilarious to me. The idea of Giddings just sitting back there hanging out, listening, that is a funny thing. Ben Stiller taking photos like he's a tourist experiencing something for the first time. This is a guy that's made millions and millions of dollars, been in some of the biggest box office sensations, some of your favorite movies of all time, potentially. And he's acting like he's a kid in a candy shop, taking a picture with his little iPhone as he gets his press badge. I love that. It really injects the fun into one of the most stressful points of the NBA season. Maybe it would be different if it wasn't the Knicks involved in this. Like maybe if this was last year, you're not seeing this. But that's also because I don't know how many celebrities are hanging out around Indiana and Oklahoma City. But the embracing of the celebrity culture just kind of taking over and allowing for stuff like that doesn't really impact the game itself, because the press conferences, there were a lot of silly questions that were asked in the press conferences. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. Some of these guys don't get to talk to a lot of these reporters on a regular basis. So you're asking, like Jalen Brunson's being asked about Villanova stuff going back to the NBA draft. I don't really care about that. Why do I care about where he was drafted now? I care more about the game. So if that's going to be the questions, I might as well get these influencers in there so they can have a little bit of fun. There was some good stuff in there, including a message from Greg Popovich that I do want you to hear. You will hear that over the course of the next hour here on Westwood One Sports. I'm Denton Day. I'm sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sports Sunday. We got a lot of different directions that we're going to go over the course of the show. It's a big day in Major League Baseball. Every team in action. So we'll keep you up to date with all of the happenings in Major League Baseball. Gabe Lacques of USA Today is going to join us at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, get his thoughts on where we are right now in Major League Baseball season. But also, I've been working on this theory that I'm going to ask Gabe about the potential of the 2026-27 work stoppage playing a noticeable impact in Major League Baseball's trade deadline in 2026. So I'm curious to see how he's going to view that. Evan Giddings, who works in San Francisco, is going to join us at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Brandon Aiyuk took to social media today to call out his current organization, and it was hilarious, I have to admit. So we will get the San Francisco perspective on that. I'll give the DC perspective on that, because I think everyone in the world is anticipating that Brandon Aiyuk is going to be playing his football with his college best friend, Jaden Daniels. That's been a very, very unique and crazy saga. When we get back, though, you'll hear from some of the NBA Finals press conferences. Plus, is it actually worth Donald Trump attending game number 3? We dive into it next. It's a Sports Sunday with Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on Westwood One Sports.
Wow, whoa. The Knicks are up 2-0. New York stole 2 games in San Antonio. The next 2 are in the Garden, with a chance to sweep Game 3 of the NBA Finals is tomorrow night. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will be in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. The tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
Denton Day with you on Westwood One Sports. Game number 3 of the NBA Finals is tomorrow. And the President of the United States is going to be in attendance. There's been a lot of criticism about him being there. And I have to say, objectively speaking, that criticism is valid. Because regardless of your political affiliation, the President of the United States doing anything in public makes it a whole lot more difficult for the public to actually do the thing that he is doing. And as we get closer to the start of the event, the details that are coming out about the changes that fans are going to need to make, they start small, but they end up being rather substantial. And you can understand why some of these changes exist. It's a massive security threat for some of them to not exist. You have to have more security when the President of the United States is there. You cannot bring bags because of the security. You need to get there early to prepare for these security. Because if you've been to a stadium in the past, I don't know, 2-3 years or so, they check you when you walk in, but it's not all that extensive. I don't sneak much into the stadium. I don't really care to, but I could. I could sneak snacks in there. I could sneak a bunch of different stuff in there. I rock a fanny pack when I walk into stadiums. Like, it's pretty easy to get things into the stadium. And the extra security is going to make that very difficult. It's going to make the experience of going very difficult. I've always been curious because some of this does feel like more social media stuff than anything. But Victor Wembanyama, who was at a press conference today doing media in the lead up to game number 3, was asked about the potential of Donald Trump being there and how that impacts his mindset. Here's what Victor Wembanyama said.
Not really. I think it could be, but isolating myself is something I've practiced over the years, and I think I'm good at it, so it's not a problem. This is similar to something media-wise, like the Olympics.
So he ain't worried about it. But I think from a fan-going perspective, it takes what should be a really great environment and it narrows it. I think I'm uniquely qualified to speak on this because Donald Trump spoke at my graduation from college. I graduated from Liberty University in 2017, and at the time, Trump was the first sitting president to speak outside of Notre Dame for a college commencement ceremony. And I got to tell you, bro, graduation is already stressful. But the changes that we had to make as people that were graduating, they kind of stunk because we had to go through all the security protocols. The people in attendance had to go through massive amounts of security protocols. So to put you in my shoes, I'm done with college. I'm staying on campus prior to graduation. I can't even imagine what this would have looked like if I was staying off campus. Thankfully, Liberty at the time, and still is very on-campus focused. If graduation started at 9:30, us, the graduators, had to be at the stadium by 5 a.m. because we had to go to a track that was adjacent to the football stadium. So this was a massive graduation. This wasn't like your specific school. I didn't go to medical school, but like medical school had their graduation after the School of Communications, which is what I graduated from, had a graduation, a couple hours after. But the big, massive commencement with all of the people that were graduating was at 9:30 in the morning. So we had to be at the stadium at 5 a.m. at a track field or a track stadium that was adjacent to the football stadium. And we had to get screened and checked. And you might be thinking, oh, well, you guys probably had some chairs over there. Wrong. We stood there for 4 hours before we were eventually ushered into the stadium. Now, we graduated. It's fine. I live to tell the tale. But the experience is a lot more stressful when you have to wake up that early. Because I didn't want to do on my graduation. I want to wake up early. Stayed up late the night before. John Wall hit a buzzer beater in Game 6 of the NBA divisional series against the Boston Celtics that year. I'm a huge Wizards fan. I was losing my mind. I want to stay up and party as much as you can on the campus of Liberty University. And we couldn't do that because we had to wake up so damn early. So fast forward to what you're going to see tomorrow. It's going to be something very similar. We've seen Trump go to a tennis event. And what happened was the tennis event started 30 minutes late. And by the time it started, the stands weren't filled. It makes it really difficult to make all of these things work because there's so many extra precautions that you have to take. And then it becomes this question of, is this actually worth it? Because I don't think that it is. I think if you're the president of the United States, there are certain things that you just have to forfeit. You took the oath of office. If you respect the oath of office, you can't just be operating like you're a normal person. I know the country's free, but there are legit things that you got to take care of if you are supposedly the most powerful person in the world. And I don't know that attending an NBA Finals game, especially when you're not an NBA fan, I don't know that attending an NBA Finals game should be on the list, or certainly not high up on the list, of things that you should be doing with your free time. It makes everything more difficult for everybody else around you. And again, he, to my knowledge, is not an NBA fan. There's been no proof that this dude is like a diehard Knicks fan, other than the fact that he made a lot of his money in New York. And then this is the killer. Because he's going to be there, and because of the security protocols that are necessary, the watch parties that have been awesome right outside of Madison Square Garden, those can't happen because it's a security risk. And like from the security perspective, I get that because you can't screen all of those people. So I can understand why if you are operating the Secret Service, you're like, hey, we can't have this happening out there. There's way too many variables. That's a massive, massive threat. We can't do it. But I don't think it's justified. I would much rather have these watch parties that are going crazy, but by fans that are legitimate, like die-hard fans of the operation that have been priced out because these tickets are so damn expensive. I mean, you're looking at $10,000, $11,000 to get into the door. A normal person can't do that. So they want to be celebrating in the street, but they want to be celebrating right next to the arena. This is a normal thing that happens. New York is they turn volume up 10, 12, 15 notches because they're so championship starved. And I don't care what anybody says. New York is a Knicks town first. To be damned with the Yankees, the Mets, the Giants, whatever sport you like, the hell with all that. New York is a Knicks city first. So that being robbed from the fans, and there's been some back and forth on social media today with various different sources saying that there are going to be watch parties. They're not going to be watch parties. There will be parties, but they're not going to be in front of Madison Square Garden, which is largely where all of the fun videos that you see on social media, they have taken place right there. And those aren't going to exist anymore, so this guy can go watch a game. And it feels like a microcosm for what the NBA, maybe with the Knicks, have become. Because as much as I like some of the fun stuff, Fat Joe and Jadakiss going to a press conference, Ben Stiller and Timothy Chalamet traveling and going to both home games and away games, all of that is fun to an extent. But it does price out the casual. Or not the casual, rather. It prices out the casual person. The ones that don't have 10 large that they can drop on going to Game 3 of the NBA Finals. I don't have $10,000 that I can drop on anything, let alone go to something as recreational as the NBA Finals. So, how did we get here? I understand that when you go to a Finals, the tickets are going to be priced up a little bit. You might see $1,000 here or there, right? $1,000 there. It's why I don't look at the Super Bowl that much, because the Super Bowl is way too corporate. It's multiple thousands of dollars after flying across the country just to get in the door. I don't have that kind of money. Most normal people don't have that kind of money. I don't know that I'm celebrating the idea of pricing out the normal fans, especially if we spend a lot of our time critiquing the NBA as an organization and as an operation for the idea of load management. And oftentimes, one of the first critiques is, what about the family that could only go to a game and their favorite player isn't playing? And to an extent, that's a fair critique. It would suck. I remember I bought a ticket to go to a Wizards-Rockets game in 2006, 2007, hoping to see Gilbert Arenas play for the first time. I'd never seen him. And he didn't end up playing that game. I was devastated. I got to see Yao Ming, and that was pretty sick. But I didn't see Gilbert Arenas because I wanted to see Gilbert Arenas. So I can empathize with the family that gets one NBA game a year and they don't get to go, or they don't get the full enjoyment of it because a player isn't playing in load management. But I also then have to empathize with the family that wants to go celebrate a team, or a person that's a fan of a team and they've been a fan of the team for 50 years and they've lived through the drought, man. They've seen all of the bad times with the Knicks, and hot damn, where there are a lot of bad times with the New York Knicks. And now they can't go to an NBA Finals game because they got to have $10,000 to sit in the nosebleed section. That's not fun. That's not enjoyable. That's nothing to celebrate. And I feel like all of these are going hand in hand because the tickets are getting priced out the roof. It feels increasingly more corporate anytime that you watch a New York Knicks game because of all of the celebrities that are around, and they have money, so they get to be courtside and they get to be on camera, and it's all great. Meanwhile, all the actual fans that are diehards of the team, that have been with the team through the ups and the downs, mostly downs, they have to sit outside and party in the street in Madison Square, right across from Madison Square Garden, so they can get the enjoyment that they need. I'm not a fan of that. So while I can understand why Adam Silver would be giddy as all hell, which he was, of the idea that the president is coming, and it's the first time the president of the United States has ever attended an NBA Finals game, what is the end goal for that? If he's not a fan, and it compromises the experience for real fans, I mean, how embarrassing is it potentially going to be when you flip that thing on to ABC at 8:30, and the arena is half empty because security precautions are taking an enormous amount of time? Let's just say maybe a section of the security precautions, the electricity goes out, metal detectors aren't working, you got to funnel everybody else to another gate. It's going to take an eternity to get through. That's not what the NBA wants. That's not what I want. That's not what you want. If you're a fan of this thing, if you're a Knicks fan, you're like, oh God. I can't party outside where I want to party. I can't go to the game because I'm priced out of this damn thing. But James Dolan wants his. It is funny. I have to admit, it is funny that James Dolan, who's been largely quiet for like the entire run that New York has gone on, is all of this sudden popping up when it's most opportune to invite one of his friends, because we know there's a connection between those two guys, the president and James Dolan. Most billionaires are connected in some way, shape, or form. If you couldn't tell by now, not a big fan of billionaires. This guy is. The only billionaires that I like are Tony Khan, to an extent Josh Harris, and Bruce Wayne. One of those guys is fictional. So we'll count him as half. I like 2.5 billionaires. That's pretty much it. But these billionaires are now dancing around, kind of dancing on you, the normal person, because they can do all of these things and you can't. It's like this weird class system. I'm getting away from the actual game itself. I apologize. It's just hard for me to like stomach that, because I want to see. I don't like the Knicks in any capacity, but I have liked watching the sheer enjoyment of the actual fans that like suffered through the 2000s prior to getting Carmelo Anthony, because man, those Knicks teams were brutal, dude, before they got Carmelo Anthony. They suffered through some of the pre-Patrick Ewing, if you're old enough, era. Like you've seen some really, really bad basketball, and now when you should be celebrating your team for finally getting to a spot where they deserve to be celebrated, because like, listen, you're not celebrating. Carmelo had some good years with the Knicks. They didn't get very far in the playoffs. You're not celebrating that. Anybody give a damn about that. But you want to be celebrating Jalen Brunson, who could go down as one of the best Knicks in the history of the franchise. If he goes and wins a championship and wins Finals MVP, I don't understand why he wouldn't be viewed as that. It's one of the best free agent signings of all time because it worked. When everybody laughed at it, myself included, I said, you're giving Jalen Brunson how much money? And you think he's going to lead you to the finals? I know. I'm not getting the blitz that Becky Hammond's going to get when she said he can't be a 1A. But I had some reservations when Jalen Brunson signed that contract, and to see the way that he has taken the city, because everybody there loves him, and become one of the best, most reliable players in the clutch in the postseason, that deserves to be celebrated by the fans that had to watch some of those like rough Eddie Curry years, or post Stephon Marbury, pre Carmelo Anthony years, back when Lynn's sanity was the best thing that you had going for you. And Lynn's sanity was a lot of fun, man, but it was also 2 weeks. Like, you play 82 games in a regular season, and then more if you get to the postseason. And the greatest portion of the Knicks' most recent history was like a 2-week span where this dude from Harvard came and lit up the Lakers and lit up the Raptors and like 3 or 4 other teams in there, who, by the way, Jeremy Lin is going to be back in New York for game number 3 as well. But like, that's who I want to see. I want to see Jeremy Lin. I want to see Carmelo Anthony. What's Amari Stoudemire up to? Right? Go find all these guys. Where's Steve Novak? Who remembers Steve Novak? White shooter, wore number 16. That was my idol for like 2 weeks. I want to see these guys. Like, I don't need to see. I'm cool on maybe losing some of the celebrities. We should probably put like a list together, and you could play drinking bingo with the celebrities that are going to be showed and in what order. Chalamet is going to be there, obviously. I can imagine that Anne Hathaway's going to be there. You got to get her there, so OG Anunoby balls out. Ben Stiller's going to be there. Fat Joe's probably going to be there. Tracy Morgan, Spike Lee's going to be there. Maybe some of the SNL people are going to be there. I imagine that one of the late night shows, Fallon, probably going to be there. I don't know if Seth Meyers likes basketball. Who cares? He might be there too. We're just going to pump the celebrity stuff. Look how cool we are. The Knicks. Whatever, man. It would be the most funny, hilarious thing if the Spurs rattle off 4 in a row. More audio from what we saw, including why the Spurs mentality is shifting, and a conversation that Greg Popovich had with one of the star players that I think is going to pay off dividends. We do that when we get back. It's Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on Westwood One Sports. Don't go anywhere.
The cover star of Madden NFL 27 has been released. And it's Chicago Bears quarterback Caleb Williams. Yo, fans in the Windy City, is this a good thing? The third-year quarterback is on Madden Curse Watch. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. Broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
Game 3 of the NBA Finals tomorrow. The Spurs need this one. They're not going to be the one that overcomes an 0-3 deficit. That's just not going to happen. So they need to take game number 3. This one's going to be in Madison Square Garden. The environment is going to be unlike anything that they have seen. It's a raucous crowd. It's the first time that Knicks fans are going to get to see their team playing for a championship in their building in almost 30 years. So expect it to be relatively crazy in there. It's going to be a real test for San Antonio to see how they respond to something like this, because it's not the easiest thing in the world. They should have at least been tied 1-1. I mean, you look at game number 2 and say, that's a game that we should have won. Like, that should have been ours. We let it go, and then we fought so hard to get it back and had an opportunity to win, and then silly mistake followed by just a tough shot. Or not a tough shot, but a shot not going in. I mean, that the attempt for Victor Wembanyama to potentially win the game was everything that you wanted. The play worked perfectly. You'll take that shot 100 times out of 100. Just didn't fall, yet you still got to kick yourself. So now they're feeling pressure. And who do they turn to when they feel a little bit of pressure? They don't turn to their actual sitting head coach. They do not. They go to Greg Popovich, the guy that's the overseer. He's effectively the godfather in San Antonio now, because he's taken a step back due to health reasons from coaching. Mitch Johnson has taken over. I do find it hilarious that every time we hear something glowingly about a coach, it's more so about Greg Popovich than it is about Mitch Johnson. We've seen him talking to Victor Wembanyama in an airport. We've heard Victor Wembanyama talk about speaking with Pop when they were down and he needed a little bit of a boost. We've heard other players do it. Stephon Castle is the latest. Here's what he said earlier this afternoon about Greg Popovich's message as they now look to go into game number 3.
Yeah, we talked to Pop, before we flew down here. And pretty much his message was just let the last 2 games go. It happened. They were very winnable games. And, we thought we gave them those games. But we got to let those go and focus on the next one. We feel like the next game.
I mean, quite honestly, they did give them game number 2. Game number 1, maybe not as much, but you did give them game number 2 when it was a play that Castle was involved with. Obviously, Pop can't be there for game number 3 due to the health stuff. The traveling is a bit of a problem and a bit of an issue, and there's just no safe way for him to get there. But they need to find a way to incorporate him in some capacity. I'm a wrestling fan. I'm a pro wrestling fan, and I lived through the Thunderdome era of World Wrestling Entertainment, where there was nobody in attendance at events. But in order to present the idea that fans were there, the WWE set up like thousands of screens that surrounded the wrestling ring, and they had fans on the screen. It's like you were FaceTiming and you were watching wrestling, and they put all of these faces up. San Antonio needs to figure out a way where they can like Thunderdome Pop to some of these games. Like, just reserve a seat on your bench, or God forbid, pay the enormous amount of money that it's going to cost to get a courtside seat at Madison Square Garden, and have like one of those old school roller TVs that you had in the early 2000s in high school and middle school. Just roll one of those televisions up, occupy it right at courtside, and it's just a live picture of Pop sitting on his chair. He's just watching. It's like Karen from SpongeBob, the robotic wife of Plankton, but instead of whatever the face she had on the TV, it's Greg Popovich. So when they need motivation, instead of looking to their actual head coach, they'll look to the guy that they recognize still as the head coach in Greg Popovich. I mean, what do you have to lose at this point? If you're going to go crazy, go balls to the wall. Like, let's have a little bit of fun while we're here, right? You're already down 2-0. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Put him there, and then you'll see him, and then you'll win, right? Because he is the guy that kind of inflates them. I do think his message is wise. Shocking. I know Greg Popovich really drills the wisdom thing here with the coaching. Who could have guessed? I do think the message is wise, though, in that there's really nothing you can do. We've seen teams go down 0-2 and win championships. It's not as big of a mountain to overcome as like a 3-1 that we saw the Cleveland Cavaliers pull off with LeBron and Kyrie going absolutely bonkers in the final 3 games to beat those Warriors. It's not like 0-3, which we've never seen anybody do in the NBA. But they have the tools, San Antonio does, to turn this thing around and win it in 6 or 7. 7 feels a little more realistic because you effectively. So I've come up with this name. Will, I'm going to need your help a little bit so you can judge my naming of this, right? A 4-0 is a sweep. That's a classic normal sweep. A 5-1 when you lose the first one, win 4 in a row, that's a gentleman's sweep, right? I think if you lose 2, go down 2-0, and then win 4 in a row, that's an F-boy sweep. Are you on board? Is that are we there with that? Because the gentleman is like the 1-0 and you win 5 in a row.
Sweep.
The F-boy sweep is you're playing too many games with the hearts of your fan base, and then you still get there in the end.
I like this.
Yeah.
Listen, I can appreciate that. That's very creative on your part, Denton. I like this.
Can you tell where my heart lies with most of these things? That's on me. That's on me. I had my days. But that's how I view this. And I look at Victor Wembanyama, right, as it really comes down to him, because when you think of the teams that have come back, at least recently, from the 0-2 deficit to then win the series, it was Giannis and the Bucks when they did it to the Phoenix Suns. Ironically, on that team was Mikal Bridges, who is now a member of the New York Knicks, so he might feel that a little bit. You had LeBron James do it. He's done it before. And then you had the LeBron team was the 16 team. They were down 3-1, but they were also down 2-0. And then you had Dwayne Wade do it against the Dallas Mavericks. This was before Dwayne Wade was a supermassive superstar. This was his crowning moment in year number 3 with Miami. They had Shaq on the team, but it was Dwayne Wade that ended up being the guy, and he earned this nickname Flash, and he became this massive superstar because of the way that he played in that series, and he was awesome. He got a shoe after that, and everyone, like myself, I lived in suburban Northern Virginia, and the amount of Dwayne Wade jerseys that were occupying Mercer Middle School after he won that finals was off the wazoo. We should have been all rocking Gilbert Arenas stuff, which your boy still was doing that one. But I was 10. I had like 6 favorite players. Everybody was rocking Dwayne Wade gear after that. Victor Wembanyama is in that class of player. He has a legitimate opportunity to be the greatest of all time, and I cannot think of something that would better add to his lore than finding himself in a position where he goes down 2-0 and then storming his way back in dominating fashion and leading his team to victory. He is under an enormous amount of pressure because he's being placed into the conversation of a guy that can be the greatest of all time. He was asked, Victor Wembanyama was, about handling that pressure, and here's what he said earlier today at the Spurs press availability.
I think the key is acceptance a lot of times, and taking a step back, realizing the journey that's behind us and what's ahead of us, and just being okay with who I am, where I am, what I'm doing. I think at the end of the day, this is everything that I wish for, so there's no reason to really overthink it, this is what I'm built for.
He is quite literally built for this. He has all of the tools of being built for this. He is quite literally built for this. And to an extent, pressure is a privilege. And he is under a pressure that we have not seen since LeBron James, because people are ready to crown him, or they want to be ready to crown him as a guy that could be one of the greatest of all time. But here's the thing. I don't know that you can enter the conversation of greatest of all time without winning like 7 or 8 championships if you lose the first one. Is that fair? No. But if you talk to anybody that's a massive fan of Michael Jordan, and they're a Jordan stan, Jordan is my GOAT till I die, what's the one thing that they will always have over a guy like a LeBron, like a Magic, like anyone else that you consider in that conversation? Jordan went 6-0. That's the one thing that they hang over everybody's head. He went 6-0 and he didn't have to go to a Game 7 ever. So Victor Wembanyama, if you want to enter that conversation legitimately, you have to start by winning the entire thing. You are not given the luxury of starting the way that LeBron did. It's unfortunate, but it comes with being a guy the caliber of Victor Wembanyama. LeBron lost that first one, but everybody pointed and said, that team sunk. Like, the Cavs sucked. Who was the second best player on that team? If you're not a massive Cavs fan, or if you're not somebody like me that was way too into mid-2000s NBA basketball, you probably don't know who's on that team. You don't know about Boobie Gibson and Zydrunas Ilgauskas, Anderson Varejao. Like, you don't know about these dudes. And you probably shouldn't know about these dudes, if we're being honest, because in the greater story of the NBA, most of them don't deserve to be in that story. Good players to an extent, but they're not great. It was LeBron and friends. Victor Wembanyama has a better team. And odds are, if you're just going down the list, talent to talent, this Spurs team has more talent than that of the New York Knicks, and they're getting bullied. So it's a completely different perspective that you're looking at if he ends up losing this series, especially if he loses in 4 or 5. If they get to 6, all right, it stinks. He might lose the Jordan conversation, but you can kind of understand if they get swept by this Knicks team with this dude that's 7-2 that should be doing everything, there's not really an excuse for that. And I think they're going to step up to the pressure. I think Wembanyama himself is going to step up to the pressure. The best game that you are going to see from Victor Wembanyama, I believe, is going to be Monday. You want to talk about dominance personified? I'm praying for Karl Anthony Towns. I'm praying for Mitchell Robinson, because I think what we're going to see is Victor Wembanyama going for like 35 and 20. I'm talking real dominance on a global stage while everybody's tuned in to the NBA Finals. That's my anticipation of what's going to happen. I'd love to know yours. We got our text line 310-840-4910. You can tweet me at the Denton Day. We're going to shift gears a little bit here. We're approaching the midway season of the MLB, and I'm excited to welcome on Gabe Lacques, who covers Major League Baseball for USA Today, get his perspective on what's going on this season and how the trade deadline will be impacted by the 2027 potential work stoppage. It's next.
This is Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
We'll get back to the NBA Finals. You can still hit us on our talk and text line, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. You can hit me on Twitter at @TheDentonDay. But we're going to transition. It's been a full slate of baseball today. A lot of great games in the books, a lot of great games to come as we continue throughout the course of the day. We're going to go to our phone line now. Welcome on Gabe Lacques, who covers Major League Baseball for the USA Today. He joins us now on Westwood One Sports with Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday. Gabe, first and foremost, man, really appreciate you making some time for us. As we have a full slate of games today, I imagine you're watching, you got an eye at least on some of these. Is there one particular game that you've been intently focused on this afternoon?
For whatever reason, I had my eye on Mariners Tigers, and it was kind of worthwhile. And that Detroit got a 2-run single with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth to walk them off. The great Kevin McGonigal. So on a day, Tarek Skubal made a rehab start. They get a walk-off win against a pretty good team. So still a long way to go, though. And still a long way to play their way back into we won't trade Tarek Skubal territory. That's still a ways off, but it's still only June 7th here, so a lot can happen. And been a weird year, a lot of swings, a lot of peaks and valleys. So obviously a big few weeks coming up. And yeah, you're right, very interesting day so far.
I was going to say, I'm glad you brought this game up because I wanted to talk about Skubal. What did you think of the rehab start? I imagine that people in Detroit got to be smiling ear to ear after watching him.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, the velocity was there, the punch outs were there. It will certainly give the folks in Detroit something to think about and raise their eyebrows a bit. Like, okay, how soon can we get him back? How much more do we want him to ramp up, or do we fast track him a bit? Those are all. I'm sure they're talking about that right now, just as the game is ending. So, no, it's all good for them, just because. It's what he needed and what they needed from him, and you kind of look at it from two dimensions if you're them, both from the can he help us climb back in it, and or can he show enough to maybe trade him if we have to, and you have to realize what the Tigers have invested in this season. They fronted a bunch of money to Framber Valdez, in an effort to kind of go all in, and everything went wrong, and Skubal got hurt, which was that was definitely like a Murphy's Law type injury. Gleyber Torres went down, the lineup went way south. Starting to show some signs of life now, maybe not as consistently as they like, but again, we still have 2 months until the trade deadline. And while I know you might be able to get a little more value if you trade him sooner, I think if they're able to, win a few games while he ramps up, it'll give him something to think about for sure. But it also maybe you get a better package down the road when teams know that they're fully in, because I believe it's August 3rd is the trade deadline this year. So we got a minute for sure.
Is there, because I'm expecting that he is going to be a hot commodity at the deadline, is there a point in the standings that you feel like Detroit needs to be at before they think about keeping him? Like if they're still 10 games under, is that where they're like, hey, man, we're not keeping him in the offseason, we might as well get something in return for him?
That's it's a great point, because it's do you look at it as your relation to 500, or do you look at it as your relation to how far are we out of this playoff thing? And they're basically just 5 games out of the playoffs right now, which is insane. And of course they need to pass 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 teams to get there. So it's still very much a pipe dream. But this is the Tigers, and you'll recall in 2024, they sold at the deadline. They sold off Jack Flaherty and several other parts as well. And right at that point in time, they were below 500 at the deadline. Looked to be waving the white flag, and then AJ Hinch got his pitching chaos going. They found some offense, and pretty much ran the table from roughly August 11th on. They were 55-63 on August 10th. And they end up not only making the playoff, they win 86 games. They take out the Astros and played a very entertaining 5-game series against the Guardians. Nearly made it to the ALCS. So, how fresh will that be in in Scott Harris's mind and in the Ilitch family's mind when they ponder this? It's huge. This is a franchise-shaking move. Will you be the guy that traded Tarek Skubal? That's a tough thing to answer, and I think it is tough to say yes if they are showing anything resembling a pulse and if they're close to 500 near the trade deadline. Because I don't see this logjam breaking up. The American League is what it is, and there's maybe I don't know 2 or 3 good teams in there. You could see a team like Toronto kind of pick it up and get back to playing close to 600 ball again. Maybe the Yankees will, overcome the Judge situation and continue their clip. But, right now it's the Rays, Guardians, and Mariners kind of leading the way. And the Yankees are occupying a wild card, and then everyone else can be had. And the White Sox are in playoff position right now. That's probably not going to hold up. So, all these things the Tigers have to consider over the next month to 2 months.
I was going to say, when do you start personally taking the standings seriously? Because you hear like the White Sox being in position, you're like, all right, we may have a little bit more to go.
Yeah, it's an age-old question. There's kind of degrees to it, because I do throw together the power rankings every week, and it's not, I don't treat it like football or like the college football AP poll where it's like, oh, they lost a series to a bad team, I'm going to dock them. There comes a point in time where, you have to sort of pass a certain threshold and then you get moved up, So from that standpoint, me personally, maybe mid-May is when I start to think, okay, you have to hand it to the White Sox a little bit. Closer to Memorial Day is kind of when, okay, you kind of can determine what's real and what is not. But, this whole paradigm has kind of been shattered in this modern playoff era, because not only is everybody in it for the longest of time, but, unfortunately, so many teams have designed their teams to just be kind of in it, There's not too many teams going all in. So, that makes it really hard to kind of judge the veracity of how all in a team is. And in addition to that, like how well will a team be playing 6 weeks from now? So it kind of never really ends in this modern era. And it's a little frustrating. And then it's weird because the Tigers, to name one team, did make a lot of moves to kind of think that they were going to be one of those teams this year, and it hasn't worked out. So the harder you try to set hard deadlines for this is what matters and this doesn't, the season takes on a mind of its own, and then you're kind of back at square one.
Gabe Lacques is my guest here on Westwood One Sports. Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sports Sunday. We're talking Major League Baseball here. So you mentioned the Yankees. They're obviously going to be without Aaron Judge for a pretty significant amount of time. We don't have an exact timetable on when they're hoping for him to get back. How do they stay afloat and keep their head above water without their best player?
Yeah, it's got to be the pitching. It's they've lost. They lost 3 of their first 5 with Judge. They did get one back against the Red Sox today. Kind of a big road trip coming up, to the extent that an early June road trip can be. 3 games at Cleveland, 3 games at Toronto. The Guardians took 2 out of 3 from them at Yankee Stadium. The Blue Jays series, season series with them last year was a real not Donnybrook per se, but the Jays won the season series, and then they won the division with 94 wins, same as the Yankees, but they had the tiebreaker. So, it's maybe a little too early to start thinking about those kind of intricacies, but both of these series definitely look like series that could matter when you look back in September and go, how did they lose the season series to Toronto, or how did they end up with a worse seed than the Guardians? Not that I necessarily anticipate either of those things happening, but they're, at the very least, both of those teams are very good tests for what the Yankees will look like in the, I don't want to say the post-Judge era per se, but, the Judgeless era, because like you said, it's, 4 to 6 weeks before they even kind of take another look at it. Yeah, and at that point, if everything checks out perfectly, I would assume he would need at least another week or 2 to ramp up. So it's going to be a minute, and, the ribs and all that kind of stuff, very vexing kind of injuries. You hope that it's not, not something that becomes really extended or would require surgery or anything like that. But, you're talking, Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon really coming off nicely, off, their late season debuts. Schlittler should be the starting pitcher in the, for the AL in the All-Star game right now. And then, Will Warren has made some really nice adjustments. Weather's still kind of hanging around, if you will. And providing them with some, some decent, decent length. And then you're going to get Max Fried back eventually. Not the, you hate to hear elbow, but didn't require surgery or anything like that. So, their pitching can keep them afloat, if not, continue, with them playing close to 600 ball. But at some point, I think your Jazz Chisholms and your Volpes and guys like that are going to have to really play consistently, on the offensive end for them to continue that. And it's going to be fascinating to see how they do without Judge, because they've struggled without him in the past. When he ran into the fence at Dodger Stadium, it kind of ended their season a few years ago. So I don't think that's going to happen this year, but obviously an entirely different animal without him in the middle of the lineup.
A few more questions for Gabe Lacques here on Westwood One Sports. Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham. I'm curious what you view the Tampa Bay Rays as. They're 12 games over 500, but they have a run differential of only +7. How do you view this team?
Yeah, I like them from the standpoint of there's a lot of different ways they can beat you on the offensive end. You're so right. It's looking a little precarious, if you will, but I love the fact that they have guys who can flat out hit, and guys that can also hit the ball out of the ballpark and play aggressively, play with some speed, match up with you. It's a pain playing them for, over 9 innings, over a 3-game series or a 4-game series. So I feel like, everything is pretty legit with them, with what they've done. I feel like they're in this iteration of the American League, this Rays team, has a really good chance to make the playoffs, perhaps win the division. But I kind of feel like, the firepower is going to show up eventually for the Yankees and for the Jays and possibly the Orioles. But, it's still a well put together team. And, I guess the big question, does it, come down to pitching? Will Nick Martinez be able to keep up his joyride? He finally had a little bit of a blow up, but, he's had several shutout outings. Shane McClanahan looks great. Drew Rasmussen looks, again, like an all-star. So, again, I feel like the infrastructure is pretty good, and I feel like the way they can score the ball on offense, if you will, allows them to kind of avoid these deep valleys.
Gabe Lacques with us here, Westwood One Sports. Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham. Well, what did you make of the Miz clocking just shy of 104 today?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's really like nothing we've really seen, and it's it challenges everything you kind of believe about pitching and what's possible and durability and all that kind of stuff. Because he comes up and he throws 100, and then he's thrown this many pitches over 102 in one outing, the most in the pitch tracking ever, and all that kind of stuff. And you kind of take it with a little bit of skepticism, but now he's lasting 6 innings every time. He's getting into the 7th inning, to some degree. It's not like he's go as hard as I possibly can for 5 innings and then collapse. He's turning into a really legitimate pitcher and not just a guy that is kind of a speed showcase for a few innings and then, here's the bullpen to soak up 4 innings. You talk about a 102 mile an hour fastball and a 96-ish mile an hour slider. I mean, that's Randy Johnson from the right side, and I don't know what, Randy's pitches might have measured and, where I assume the technology is a little better now, but, he had that 98 mile an hour fastball, that 93 mile an hour slider, absolutely impossible against left-handed hitters. So, it's really kind of happening for him. And you just keep an eye on it and think, well, geez, is he going to keep up this, sustain this for 30 starts in the big leagues this year? Right now, it looks like, definitely the real deal on all those counts.
Gabe, I'll get you out of here on this. I know we're far away from the trade deadline, but I'm curious, do you anticipate that teams might be maybe a little bit more aggressive because there is a little bit of uncertainty as to whether or not we're going to be playing in 2027?
Whew, that's a really good point. Yeah. You'll hear what the smoke signals, see what the smoke signals look like with the negotiations. I'm sure it's going to be grim up until that point. But, what do you do in that case? Do you give up more prospects because they're further away, or do you hold on to them because, well, why trade for a guy with 2 years left on his contract if, next year's going to be a wash anyway? It will definitely affect the dynamics based on the contract situation of the players in play. For a guy like Scooble, probably not, because he's in his walk year anyway. So, that's a great point you raise, and I think there may be, to your point, I think there may be a few teams who might be like, burn the ships, let's go for it. We may not be alive tomorrow, and there may not be a season next year. That mentality might rein in a little bit. But at the end of the day, so many of these team presidents are so cautious and love their prospects so much that it probably won't move the needle that much, but it's definitely, there will probably be a team or two that takes that tack just based on their organizational situation at that time.
Gabe, really appreciate the time, man. Enjoy the rest of the action that we got going on this afternoon.
You got it, man. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
That is Gabe Lacques, USA Today, with us here on Westwood One Sports with Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday. Jacob Mizorowski throwing, I said today, he was yesterday, but Jacob Mizorowski throwing just shy of 104 doesn't feel like a real thing. I saw that come across the ticker because I was not watching a Milwaukee Brewers game on the weekend, but I saw that come across the ticker and I was like, that had to be a typo. Intern maybe got a little trigger happy, hit send. There's no way he threw nearly 104. Like, I don't even understand. It's hard to wrap your head around how the human body can actually do that, to force a ball to go that fast. It's stunning to watch. And then, as Gabe said, to actually have him be an adequate pitcher with more than just, hey, here's 104 over the plate, here's 102, here's 100. For him to develop into someone that's a legitimate pitcher has been really, really cool to watch. But I think about that stuff all the time as like a normal person. I didn't play baseball really ever, but certainly not at a high level. So I don't know how far or how fast I could ever throw. Maybe your boy could clock like 60. Is that fair? I mean, Will, you were a baseball player. Like, could the casual person in my athletic prime, which is not now, but could the casual person have thrown 60 miles an hour a baseball?
60, maybe 65. It depends on your athleticism. I'd like to think you could throw it in the 60s. I'd like to think so. But, I mean, I'll tell you this, how crazy it is like when I was in high school and in North Carolina, like it's a hotbed for very elite high school baseball talent. A lot of guys go top D1, get drafted around here. And when I was coming up, like the magic number was throwing 90, like hitting 90. That was or low 90s. That was a big. And now it's just like elite high schoolers are 95 to 96, 7, upper, and even 98. Like it's stupid. Like what guys are able to do now. It's crazy.
And especially like you mentioned it at the young level, because like that is not. If you wanted to argue, I would not argue this, but if you wanted to argue, if you hate this new generation, you'd be like, oh, it's PED. It's not that, right? Like if you're doing that at a young age, it literally just is the development of kind of the math in regard, like working on the angles and all these different things, and then you're working out the adjustments in actual workouts to maximize hitting that speed. Maybe we'll get to a point where 103 is a normal thing for pitchers to hit. I feel like that's insane to say out loud, though. Like, yeah, we'll just casually be having multiple dudes hitting 103 on like a Tuesday in July.
I feel like a lot of it has to do with the science, like, is easier to figure out now with these pitching labs that all these, like, I have the super regionals on right now on the TV, and like these top college programs, they have pitching labs and things like that, and they're able to figure out a way to figure out the technique that allows you to get just a few more miles an hour on your fastball, and now guys are able to do it. It's crazy what they're able to do.
Super regionals, by the way, have been pretty filthy. I mean, college baseball is on a heater right now. I know you're a UNC fan, so we're keeping an eye on that one. It's getting a little dicey.
By top of the 9th. They just got a run back in the 8th and stranded 2 runners in scoring position, so they got some work to do.
We'll keep you updated on some scores. I'll go across the MLB coming up here shortly. You can connect with us on Twitter at The Denton Day. We have a talk and text line at 310-840-4910. We have a YouTube chat. Subscribe to us, Westwood One Sports Night. Our chat is pretty active. We got Erin in the chat saying she remembers The Miz when he was on The Real World. I do too. The Real World, I'm a big fan of The Challenge, so he pops back every now and then on challenge events, usually like reunions because he ain't doing it anymore. But I'm also a wrestling guy, so I am very familiar with that Miz as well. When we get back, I will take you around some of the important scores in Major League Baseball. But a discussion that was had this week about a guy leaving a franchise still being considered a part of that franchise. It got weird, and I want to dissect it next on Westwood One Sports.
Wow, wow, whoa. The Knicks are up 2-0. New York stole 2 games in San Antonio. The next 2 are in the Garden with a chance to sweep. Game 3 of the NBA Finals is tomorrow night. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will be in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
The biggest news of this past week in the NFL was Myles Garrett being traded to the Los Angeles Rams. It seemingly came out of nowhere, and I stumbled across something that I found to be a really odd perspective. Maybe it's positively odd, but I was a little taken aback by this. I was reading Albert Breer's MMQB, and he was talking with Andrew Berry, who is the general manager of the Cleveland Browns, and he's the guy that ultimately pulled the trigger on trading Myles Garrett. Now, I've come kind of half circle to where I kind of get it from the Browns. I would have still liked a bigger haul in return, but look, man, if you love Jared Verse, go get Jared Verse. And they wanted Jared Verse and a first-round pick. They got Jared Verse and a first-round pick and a few more after that. So good on the Browns. If that was their plan, they executed their plan. Hooray. But he said this, and this is a quote that I want to read. It's incredibly important that Myles knows we will welcome him back to the organization with open arms when his career is over. He'll retire a Brown. He'll go into Canton a Brown. That's a lifelong relationship, and that doesn't change just because he's wearing a different uniform, end quote. And I read that, and at first I hear that, and I'm like, that's great. Yeah, like you want to maintain the relationship with alumni, and it's very rare in today's day and age that a player plays the entirety of his career wearing just one helmet. I mean, Peyton Manning didn't do it. Tom Brady didn't do it. I mean, these are guys that you're thinking, yeah, Brady's going to be a Patriot for forever. He won 6 Super Bowls there. Not always the case. So it's not out of the ordinary, I don't think, for a guy to play and to finish his career in a different uniform than where he started. But what I have a little bit of a complication with, and this is where I need your help at 310-840-4910. You can call us. That's a talk and text line, so you can text us as well. You can tweet me at the Denton Day. I'm Denton Day, sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday on Westwood One Sports. What I'm having an issue wrapping my head around is, what if Myles Garrett goes and has massive amounts of success in Los Angeles? Like Brady played a few years in Tampa. Peyton Manning played a few years in Denver, but the bulk of their career was in New England for Brady, was in Indianapolis for Peyton Manning. Myles Garrett's only 30 years old. So I don't think it's crazy to think that he could go on and play 17 years in the NFL, which means he would have played 9 in Cleveland and then 8 in Los Angeles. And maybe 17 is shortchanging him. I think you can play defensive end at a high enough level for a pretty long time. At least at a level where you're still going to be getting contracts. And I don't know that Los Angeles is ever going to really let him go if he's still playing at a high level. Because the crazy thing is, like, he did not have a drop-off in 2025. The reigning defensive player of the year who had 25 sacks didn't have a drop-off, and he didn't show you a reason as to why that could be the case. So I'm sitting here wondering, would he actually be, like, if he goes on, he had 125 sacks in Cleveland. If he has another 100 in Los Angeles, but he wins championships plural, or even just one, because he was never going to win one in Cleveland. That's unfortunately the history and the future of the Browns until they fix the quarterback and the coach and the rest of the roster. He was never going to win one in Cleveland. His best moments career-wise might come in Los Angeles. There is a reality where he not only wins a championship, but he can still break his own single-season sack record. You know, what if he goes to Los Angeles, wins a championship, and has 26 sacks in a season? At that point forward, I'm sure he's thinking, well, I'm a Ram now. I just won a championship. That's a career thing. I just broke a record that I had already set. That's a career thing. And if Aaron Donald comes back, I don't think that's very possible, right? Because you can't double team both of those dudes. You got to pick your poison. Those two guys playing right next to each other. There has never been a defensive combo of guys playing within 2 feet of one another that would be better than Myles Garrett and Aaron Donald. I don't give a damn that Aaron Donald has been retired for 2 years. You are not going to have a better 1-2 combo that are 2 feet from one another playing next to each other, right? It's just not going to happen. So I do wonder how that would work. It's obviously you can still go in as both, but that's just, we're in a very unique scenario here because you traded a guy in his prime. And if you felt it was best for your organization, which they clearly did, fine. That's all good and well. Again, I'm not stopping you from feeling that way. If you like Jared Verse, you like Jared Verse. But I found it very odd that they would be so quick to be like, he's still ours. He's still one of us. That's our guy. Yeah, we traded him, but he's forever welcome at this home. We didn't want him right now, but he is welcome after that. I found that to be, honestly, a little desperate. I can't believe he said that. You say that years down the line, after it's been a few years, you can feel that way internally. But I feel like you say that years down the line when it's been a little bit. And you see what his career looks like over there. And then, when the time is up, when he gets close to retirement, hey, he's still one of ours. We still welcome him in our organization. Saying that less than a week after you traded him, I don't know that I can get behind that. It makes me feel like you're maybe feeling like that wasn't the right move. Although, from everything that we have seen, I don't know that the roster in Cleveland is mad that Myles Garrett is gone, which is weird to say. But it doesn't feel like everybody's upset. They're not treating him the way that Philadelphia treated A.J. Brown, where there were a bunch of people that got in front of a microphone and said, thank God he's gone. Oh, I'm glad he's out of here. They're not doing that to Myles Garrett, but they are treating him as if, hey, our organization might have gotten better, which is a wild thing to say when you move off of a guy that had 25 sacks last year. I mean, he was putting up personal sack numbers that were rivaling sack numbers of teams. You know, there were teams that were struggling to come up with the amount of sacks that Myles Garrett had by himself. And you just let that, and you give him away. But you still want him to be remembered when he goes into Canton as one of yours. I found that weird. But that is the Browns for you. Our talking text line is open at 310-840-4910. 310-840-4910. We spent the bulk of today's show discussing the NBA Finals. We got a texter that texts in, says, Denton, you've greatly underestimated Victor Wembanyama's youth, and you greatly underestimate the Knicks, he puts in quotes, talent. The Knicks are boat racing San Antonio because they're the better team, period. Recognize that. This thing is over. There's a couple different things here. I don't think I'm underestimating the Knicks' talent when I say that I think San Antonio is more talented. I think San Antonio is one of the most talented teams in the NBA. I don't think there's really anybody that's more talented than them. So it's not to say the Knicks are untalented. It's just that the Spurs are very talented. Secondly, and maybe this is first, it's a 2-0 series, and the total margin of victory has been 11 points. That is not a boat racing. They won by 1 point in game number 2. They did not boat race them in game number 2. In fact, they nearly gave the game away. If it wasn't for a boneheaded play and then a missed jumper, they lose that game. That is not a boat race. Winning by 10 points is not a boat race. What the Knicks did to Atlanta and winning by like 60, that's a boat race. Winning by 11 over the course of 2 games, even though it was 10-1, that averages to 5.5 points per win. That's not a boat race. They're not shredding them. Like this series, that's the thing that I think most people are kind of having an issue wrapping their head around. The Knicks are winning the series. Yes, it is not over. Because you can still point to certain things where, hey, you make one small adjustment here if you're San Antonio, you make one small adjustment there, and it's a 1-1 series. Right? So what happens in game number 3? Now, if it's 3-0, I'll shut the hell up. You get to 3-0, you win. Ain't nobody coming back from 0-3. But I don't think this is over at all. The Knicks in Madison Square Garden are a beast, no doubt, but eventually this streak is going to end. They haven't lost since April 23rd, but eventually this streak is going to end. If you're just counting the Spurs out and Victor Wembanyama out, more power to you, but I ain't doing that. Because I be watching, I see some things where they can make some adjustments. All it takes is one dude off that bench for San Antonio to start playing with his hair on fire, and they got real weapons, right? Keldon Johnson had a good regular season. I don't know where the hell he's been in the finals. He makes a couple of shots, and all of a sudden, San Antonio got a nice little 1-2 combo off the bench with Harper and Keldon Johnson. Right now, it's just been Harper carrying the weight. There are still a plethora of reasons as to why San Antonio could come back and win this thing. I'm Denton Day. I'm sitting in for Josh Graham on Westwood One Sports. Coming up, you'll never guess which wide receiver just took a shot at his own team. I'll share it with you next. Don't go anywhere.
Wow, whoa. The Knicks are up 2-0. New York stole 2 games in San Antonio. The next 2 are in the Garden with a chance to sweep. Game 3 of the NBA Finals is tomorrow night. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
Attacking your own team on social media is crazy, but I gotta be honest, I'm glad that Brandon Aiyuk took his approach this morning. It's 10 a.m. locally in D.C. I pull up my phone, and I am treated to a gift, and that gift is for the first time in what feels like an eternity. Brandon Aiyuk is speaking, and he's speaking about his San Francisco 49ers, and he ain't saying anything that's polite. I did a little bit of math. If it's almost 10 a.m. in D.C., Aiyuk presumably is in California. That's where he's from. That's where he has played for the last few years. That's 3 hours behind Washington, D.C. So if it's almost 10 a.m. there in D.C., that means it's like 6:30 a.m. in California, and he's releasing this video. I want to play this for you because this is, you need to hear it. It's going to go down in like the hilarity of this NFL offseason. Here's Brandon Aiyuk raging against his own team on his Instagram earlier this morning.
Dealing with, like them kids, and they don't get picked for the basketball game at the court. But they the ones that brought the ball. So they're like, all right, you don't want to pick me? I'm taking my ball. I'm going home. Boys are like, when your kid, he got this one toy, but he don't really know how to use it correctly. So somebody else about to pick it up and play with it. And they're like, oh, yeah, leave. And they're like, wait, hold on, that's my toy. Boy, little boy, man, stop running from the belt. The belt coming. You scared. They scared. The truth is, they scared. They know how I get. They gonna say, oh yeah, DA did this, DA did that, DA did. That's allegedly. But what they not gonna say is, DA suck at football because they know how I get. And they running from that belt that's on the way. It's inevitable. It's coming. Stop running. Stop being a female dog. Stop being a little cat. Stop running from the belt.
That's Brandon Aiyuk earlier today on Instagram. So there's a lot of things to unpack here. I want to start with the obvious one because it was at the very end of the clip. That was not an edit that I made. The slowing down of those two phrases at the end was nothing that I did. That was an edit that Brandon Aiyuk made on the post, which leads me to believe that this is a well thought out post. Well, it's a thought out post. You can decide for yourself how well thought out it is, but it leads me to believe that this is a thought out post. What we are seeing right now is a very odd battle between San Francisco and Brandon Aiyuk. And do not get this twisted in any way, shape, or form. San Francisco is very much doing Brandon Aiyuk wrong to an extent. Some of the stuff that Aiyuk is doing is very much on him, but they are not clear of any of the blame in this. They have taken this approach to where they are undercutting Brandon Aiyuk at every possible turn. They have slandered Brandon Aiyuk. Apparently, the negotiations for his deal that has since been voided got nasty. Like really, really nasty. Like the kind of nasty where you give up all of the guaranteed money and then don't ever want to play for them again, which I've never done that in my life. I worked some jobs that sucked. I never wanted to work that. I never wanted to give up the money. You know what I mean? I had to find somewhere else to be gainfully employed before I could think about giving up the money. And Aiyuk is just saying, I hate you so much that I'm willing to give up the money to not be here. Now, some of the way that he handles himself is not the best in the world. Filming
Stop being a female dog.
Stop being a female dog. I mean, hello. Him filming himself going 111 miles an hour, not smart. That's really incriminating evidence in a speeding trial of you going reckless. That's not an ideal way of handling things. But I am glad that for the first time he's actually speaking. Because in this almost 2-year episode, he has very rarely gotten in front of any camera or microphone and allowed any part of his side of the story to be told. And throughout that entire thing, which is like 90 seconds, everything was about football. He could sit up there and take a million personal shots because we don't know. We don't know what exactly happened between the two of them. We know that the two sides don't like each other. We don't know how they got there because it has to be more than just the way he rehabs an injury. Like, we can't be naive to think that the only reason this is happening is because he didn't show up to rehab. There's so much more going on there. He could have aired a lot of dirty laundry, and he decided not to, which I think is big on him. He kept it all about football. That's been my entire thing through this process. If San Francisco thought that Brandon Aiyuk sucked, Brandon Aiyuk would not be a member of the roster. If they thought he was bad, they wouldn't hold him. The only reason he's still there is because they think, at least in some form, he can still play. We haven't seen him really play since 2023. We got 7 games in 2024. But we haven't seen a full season from Aiyuk since 2023. That's a long time, admittedly. But if they thought he sucked, he wouldn't be here. And I understand his frustration, because picture this as you. Sometimes we look at football players as these larger-than-life characters, and I get it, they make a lot of money. We see them on television. There are a lot of reasons for us to view them in that lens. But if you break this thing down to just a normal day-to-day job, the employer is essentially taking your money away and then not letting you go work somewhere else. It's diabolical in that sense. If you're just thinking about this from like an accounting firm perspective, your boss ain't paying you and he ain't letting you leave. You're being held hostage at whatever accounting firm in my fantasy world that you work at. Or maybe you're a salon, you work at a salon, whatever. You're being held hostage. What is the point of them keeping him around? There isn't one. Nobody's going to trade for him, because if you do trade for him, you have to pick up the contract that San Francisco has voided, and then you're on the hook for a majority of the money that you're going to have to give to him. We also know it's very clear where he wants to play, because prior to this video, on Saturday, he had put out 2 pictures on social media, one of which was a shirtless selfie to show that he was in somewhat shape. I say somewhat because having abs does not make you in football shape. There are a lot of people that have abs, and I'm sure their route tree sucks. So having abs is not football shape, but the abs were not the focal point of the picture. It was the fact that he is a San Francisco 49er wearing a hat of the Washington Commanders. And then he posted a second photo, a selfie of the face, still with the Commanders hat on, but in this photo was a football, and not just any football. It was a football that had a Washington Commanders logo on it, because it was a game ball that was used at some point this season. So everybody knows he wants to go to Washington. San Francisco knows that he wants to go to Washington, and they don't want him to go to Washington. They don't want him to go play with Jaden Daniels. I can't blame them, because if I thought he was still good, I would not want him to go play with a quarterback in Jaden Daniels that has the potential to be really, really good. And then give a team that's in your conference a 1-2 punch of Terry McLaurin and Brandon Aiyuk. That's a nice receiving duo to have. You don't want to go give that to anybody. So I can understand from San Francisco's side of things why they're not in a rush to let him go. But I also think they're starting to play a little dirty. Can I give a conspiracy theory? I don't have anything to back this up, but I'm going to put this out in the ether, and then I'm going to let you decide whether or not this is legit. There was a report that came out within the last 10 days that said if Brandon Aiyuk were to report to San Francisco, he would be cut on the spot. He can't report to San Francisco because they canceled their OTAs. Now, why would San Francisco, who is in a division with the defending Super Bowl champion, Seattle Seahawks, who's in a division with the Los Angeles Rams, who just traded for Myles Garrett, and they're in a division with a very mighty Jacoby Brissett and Carson Beck. All right, tongue-in-cheek, get them out of there. But you're in a division with Seattle and Los Angeles. Why would you willingly give up opportunities to install something or just to get any sort of work with your team? Could it be because this report came out that if Brandon Aiyuk stepped foot on the premises, he would be cut, and then maybe you didn't want him to step on the premises and get cut, therefore become a free agent and then go sign with the Washington Commanders? Are John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan petty enough to cancel practice so as to keep holding this dude hostage? We don't know the direct answer to that, but I'm leaning that yes is the answer to that, because why else would you do it? You need the reps. You need as much as you can get. No one should be canceling practice as you're leading up to the NFL season. Like, that should not be happening. These are points of the season to maximize and to get guys who are new comfortable with what you're trying to do. I'm sure Mike Evans would love to get more reps with Brock Purdy, even if it is an OTAs. It doesn't have to be game speed. Let him get comfortable. Get everybody back in the fray. What is this offense going to look like? And they canceled it. That's weird to me. If you want to talk about like a red flag or some sort of flag that's waving in the wind, that's a flag that's waving in the wind. They're so committed to the keeping Brandon Aiyuk hostage that they're just saying we're going to make sure that he does not step foot on the premises. Because, by the way, that's a much, much better way of handling things if I'm Brandon Aiyuk than the social media stuff. Most people don't really care in the organization about social media. They're probably laughing at it to an extent. It's like, oh, look what he's doing now. But the best way to really disrupt, if you want to be a disruptor, is to go to the place of business. We're talking Stone Cold Steve Austin in 97, glass shattering. I'm not saying you got to go hit Kyle Shanahan over the head with a bedpan, but you got to get some attention. Yeah, the best way to do that, the best way to ruffle feathers would be to show up at the place of business. I'm here. Let's talk. No more media games. No more releasing things about me. I don't got to go on. No, we are face to face. Let's have ourselves a conversation. Ultimately, that obviously did not happen. I don't think that's ever going to happen because when the time comes that they are going to cut him, I don't anticipate that's going to be face to face. I don't even know that'll be over the phone. They might mail the agent the letter of separation. Say, hey, we are going to wipe our hands with this one. We're done with the Brandon Aiyuk saga. Let's get the San Francisco side of things. Evan Giddings covers the 49ers for 95.7 The Game in San Francisco. He is our guest next. How do they feel about the Brandon Aiyuk video? We tackle that subject when we get back right here on Westwood One Sports.
This is Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
At the Denton Day on Twitter, our talking text line 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. I'm Denton Day sitting in for Josh Graham on a Sunday here on Westwood One Sports. In a moment, we'll have Evan Giddings on the phone. He covers the San Francisco 49ers to get his thoughts on the Brandon Aiyuk video that was posted this morning where Brandon Aiyuk threatened is maybe not the best word, but he vowed. It was a stand that he is going to break out the belt when he eventually sees the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I'm in Washington, D.C., and I support the team that about everybody under the sun believes that Brandon Aiyuk is going to be playing for in 2026. He is a very close friend of Jaden Daniels. He has long wanted to play with Jaden Daniels so far back that when this initial contract was being negotiated, Jaden Daniels was with Brandon Aiyuk because he was doing this podcast run. If he got the contract, 4 years, $120 million, 30 a pop. He got the contract at the very end of 2024. I mean, we've seen some nasty negotiations before over the course of NFL history. I am desperate to know what exactly was in these negotiations that led to the fracturing of the relationship. Because prior to the 2024 offseason, following his 1,300-yard season in 2023, there had not really been any conversation that Brandon Aiyuk did not want to be in San Francisco. And then all of a sudden, it felt like getting hit by a truck with this news of he doesn't like it there. They are frustrated with him, and it's him and Debo and all these things, right? And you're learning about some of the inner workings, but we don't know all the inner workings. And then he does this podcast run where he's like booking himself on podcasts, or at least that's how it felt. And he's bringing Jaden Daniels along, but I hated that PR run for him because what he would do is he would book himself on a podcast, and then the podcast would rightfully, because this is what you have to do if you are given the gift of Brandon Aiyuk wanting to be on your podcast, and he says, "Hey, I'd like to be on the podcast because I got some things to get off my chest." You're going to ask him the hard question: "Hey, do you still want to play in San Francisco?" And it felt like every time somebody asked him that question, he was going to make like this stand. Like, nope, I don't. I'd rather play X, Y, and Z. And then every time somebody asked him, he got a little cold feet, and then he ultimately signed that contract, right? But they've hated each other. The two sides have hated each other ever since. And hear these stories about him not rehabbing and him not being great in the locker room and everything under the sun, and then we see this video of him speeding for God knows what reason. I mean, you want to talk about, well, I'm a little bit more on the side of Brandon Aiyuk in this conversation. You want to talk about the hilarity of the situation. Posting a video of you speeding 111 miles in front of a very famous landmark is pretty idiotic. That landmark being the stadium. I mean, you want to talk about self-incrimination, the best defense lawyer in the world ain't getting you out of that ticket. Like, oh, you posted the video yourself with this very clear, like, yep, this is the building that I'm near, I'm in this jurisdiction, with a dashboard clearly visible that says you going upwards of 100 miles an hour, and I've never been to San Francisco, but I feel pretty comfortable firing at the hip saying that there's not a lot of places in San Francisco where the speed limit goes up to 100. So you're just like violating everything, and you're doing it on video. How do we defend that? And there is no defense of that. If you're like a reputable lawyer, you're saying, no, I'm not taking that. It's going to take my career. I can't get you out of that one, bro. So that situation has been weird, but I do lean on this and say, I think San Francisco is just afraid that he is still good. I think San Francisco has reached the point where they have done everything that they have to sour the relationship. I think oftentimes in the NFL, teams will do some things that are questionable at best because they have the power. And in most instances, they have the power. They clearly do not have the power over Brandon Aiyuk. He is crazy enough, and he hates them enough to willingly walk away from guaranteed millions of dollars that are part of the contract. I have some hate for people in the world. It's not nice, but I do. I consider myself to be an ethical hater. It's based off of experiences, some facts. There's not a lot of people in this world that I would hate enough to not get paid $30 million. In fact, there's like really nobody that I would hate enough to not get paid $30 million, just to not be in their presence. If you give me $30 million, I'll be sitting next to anybody. Ted DiBiase said, the $1 million man, everybody got a price. My price is $30 million. You can sit me next to anybody. We'll sit front row at church. I don't give a damn. You give me $30 million, I'm going to be there. Clearly, that's not the case for Brandon Aiyuk in the way that he feels about the San Francisco 49ers. That relationship is just completely frayed from the jump. I don't even know why they're still entertaining this at this point. Just let him go. I mean, it's becoming toxic. I actually feel like this is a little bit more interesting. Crazy, I know. I feel like it's a little bit more interesting than the Rossini-Vrabel stuff. Like, that was a juicy story. You can sink your teeth into it because how often do you see a lead reporter banging a sitting NFL head coach? Not very frequently. And then you get more information. It's like, oh my God, everybody knew about this. They've been doing this for years. They were just hiding in plain sight. But at a certain point, you reach the point where it's like, yeah, there's adults that had an affair. And while ethically, morally, that's not very nice, adults having affairs, not the craziest thing in the world. Odds are, in your life, you have known an adult that has had an affair before. So the story really just does become that until we potentially maybe kind of sort of get like a massive nuke in the Rossini and Vrabel story. Not saying that we will, but if we do, that'll make it more entertaining. But in terms of the football stuff, I find this to be way more interesting because it directly impacts winning and losing off of the field, on the field, and off the field, I guess, but really on the field. This directly impacts how San Francisco could play. It directly impacts how Washington could play. It's worth pointing out that these two teams play each other in week number 6. You're like, man, I'd love to watch that game. Brandon Aiyuk playing his former team. It's probably out of market. Wrong. It's on Monday Night Football, nationally televised. The biggest actual football storyline of the offseason, Brandon Aiyuk and his relationship with San Francisco, could legitimately come to a head where he is talking about giving them the belt. That's what he meant. Even if he doesn't land in Washington, which the expectation is that he is going to land in Washington. But if there's a scenario where Brandon Aiyuk does not land in Washington, I would put so much amount of money. I would put all the money that Brandon Aiyuk voided in his guarantees on the fact that he is going to sign with somebody that is playing San Francisco this year. It's all petty. It's all petty at this point. There is real hate and vitriol. And I don't buy any idea that San Francisco is playing like 8D chess here. I did this, I was on Locally today. And somebody asked me, like, Dan, what if San Francisco is planning this thing all along? They're like super villains. And while they might be villainous in some extent, I do not believe that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, who are the puppeteers with the Brandon Aiyuk saga, are so galaxy-brained that they would void Brandon Aiyuk's contract money, understanding that he was trying to force his way out to Washington, to then set up for teams to want to trade for Brandon Aiyuk or be open to trading for Brandon Aiyuk, which shockingly nobody did, to ultimately end up cutting him under the guise to say, hey, he's going to go to DC and he's going to blow them up. Like, he's actually a sleeper agent for a team that we might be a little fearful of in the NFC. He's going to go there. We know that he's a loose cannon. He's going to go there. We're just playing coy. We're just holding him and holding him and holding him. So eventually DC and Adam Peters, who used to work in our building, by the way, that's important, and Jay Daniels, who threw a touchdown pass to Brandon Aiyuk to beat Justin Herbert when Justin Herbert played at Oregon and was going to go potentially play in the college football playoff, didn't get there because of Jay Daniels. I don't believe that they are so galaxy-brained to the point where they're like trying to weasel Washington into signing Brandon Aiyuk under the premise that Brandon Aiyuk is going to blow that organization up. I think they're just petty. And if you've heard anybody talk about Kyle Shanahan, he has a history of being a little petty. Coaches will say that. Players will say that. Everyone across the NFL has looked at that dude and be like, hey, man, if you're on his good side, you're good. If you're not on the good side of Kyle Shanahan, you better watch out because he's going to run over you like a Mack truck. He's an intense dude, man. He's an intense dude.
I just don't know why San Francisco is continually putting up with this if they really don't think he's good. He said in the video, they're afraid of what I'm going to do on the field. And of everything that Brandon Aiyuk has done, that is the most believable element. That he can still play. Because if he sucked, he would not be there. It is so easy. It is so easy to move off of somebody who is bad at their job. Employers, when they got to downsize, like, hey, give me the guy that sucks at the job. Let me get out of him. Let me get out of that contract. You don't have to really twist anybody's arm to fire a dude that sucks. You got to twist their arm to get rid of a dude that they know is helpful. And I feel like that's where San Francisco is at this point, where they know when he gets to wherever his next destination is, which again is presumably DC, we are in a little bit of trouble with what is going on there. You can chime in on the conversation, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. That's a talk and a text line. You can weigh in on Brandon Aiyuk. You can weigh in on the NBA Finals. We got game number 3. That one's coming up tomorrow night. You get the Knicks and the Spurs. The Knicks with the potential to go up 3-0. We did get a little bit of clarity over the course of the show that the watch parties that have been denied in Madison Square Garden, in front of Madison Square Garden, are in fact not related to Donald Trump being in attendance for game number 3. I don't believe that, but these are the reports that are coming out. And Ian Begley, who covers the Knicks for SNY, he's been a long time Knicks reporter. He tweeted out, this is a statement from a Madison Square Garden spokesperson. The permit for Plaza 33 Game 3 watch party was denied by the city's permitting office in consultation with the NYPD. However, the White House will confirm that it is not about the president. We understand that NYPD Commissioner Tisch is planning additional street closures around Madison Square Garden. End quote. So somebody at Madison Square Garden is saying, no, this is not us. This is not about the president. This is NYPD. That's them. Take all of your hate and direct it to them. I don't believe that for one second. First of all, I know how security works. It's generally speaking not a smart idea to have thousands of people congregate outside of a place where they know the president of the United States is going to be. I'm in D.C. I have a little bit of an idea on how the security system works there. They generally don't like when the president is around a lot of people. Shocking, I know. They don't like his schedule being known. They like keeping things secret. The fact that they've been promoting that this dude is going to be at Game 3 is actually idiotic for security purposes. Now, they had to let the fans know because they got to come up 2 hours early so they can get in. My thought is that there's going to be a very, very large portion of the fan base who has paid thousands of dollars for tickets in the actual arena by the time the game starts. Donald Trump went to a tennis event, I think it was the U.S. Open, and it took 30 minutes before the match started. It started 30 minutes late, and then it took even longer for all of the fans to get in there. It's a pain in the rear end to deal with presidential security going into an event when you have 20,000 people, especially 20,000 people that are nuts. Because, listen, man, if I'm a Knicks fan, getting there 2 hours early is not a problem. It's Game 3 of the NBA Finals. My team's up 2-0. I ain't doing anything that day. I got nothing but free time. Work, I ain't going. I'm hanging out. I'm day drinking. Where's the Darty at, right? Give me a day party. I'm pre-gaming at all of the bars. But that's also part of the problem. You're going to get a bunch of drunk people that are trying to get in to watch their New York Knicks because their New York Knicks, for the first time in over 50 years, have an opportunity to win a championship. Now, they can't win the actual championship in game number 3. They would have to do that in game number 4, assuming they win game number 3. But it's just a complete cluster. But Madison Square Garden is saying, no, that's NYPD. That's NYPD. That's why the watch parties aren't happening. It's not us. It's not the president. You got to blame them. I think they're all working in collusion with each other, constitution with one another. Maybe that's a better word. I think they're all in the same line. They just want to take some of the blame. I do think that they're a little afraid that he's going to get booed at the game. He's not going to be courtside, obviously. You want to talk about a security risk. You can't put him out in the open like that. That'd be idiotic. So he's going to be up in a booth, probably sitting next to James Dolan, who has been really quiet until now. I almost forgot that James Dolan was still around, outside of the Charles Oakley and James Dolan beef, and then him inviting one of his BFFs, Donald Trump, to game number 3. He had been really, really quiet. I think Knicks fans were like, yes, thank you. We've been waiting for him to be really, really quiet for a really, really long time. But now he's back active. If you are going to the game, I'd actually like to know how you feel about this. 310-840-4910. If you're in New York, I'd like to know how you feel about this. 310-840-4910. Presidential motorcades suck, dude. I mean, they really do. I be in D.C. all the time, and if you're in Washington, D.C., or if you've ever been in Washington, D.C. during a motorcade, you just have to sit there. And again, you get it because it's the president of the United States. It doesn't matter who's in office. You understand it. But they stink. I was once an hour late for a job, and I work in radio. We work on pretty hard deadlines. You can't push the start back of a show. That's not how that works. There's no wiggle room there. This show started at 4 p.m. sharp Eastern time. I couldn't text the boss and be like, hey, I'm running a little late. Can we push the start back to 4:05? That's not how that works. These motorcades, though, are terrible like that. I also got kicked out of a gym once for presidential security. On a whim. It was Biden wasn't even in office anymore. It was 2 years ago. I was working on a morning show in D.C., or a mid-morning show. It was 10 to 1. I would go and I work out before the show just about every single day. I had to get my grind on. So I'm in the gym. There's a gym in the building. I didn't want to pay for a gym, so I went to the gym in the building. I get into the gym in the building at 6. Show starts at 10. I like to work out. Big breakfast sandwich guy. Got my breakfast, got my bagel, my bacon. Not my bacon. I'm a turkey sausage, maple chicken sausage kind of guy. But I got my protein, my eggs. So I work out for an hour, go up, eat breakfast, get ready for the show, right? It's this perfect blend. I get into the gym at 6:30. Security comes in, 6:45. Hey, you got 10 minutes. You got to leave. I'm like, what? Yeah, Secret Service doing a sweep of the building. I was like, why? And we can't tell you. I was like, all right, I'm not an idiot. Secret Service is here for one person. I'm not an idiot. 10 minutes later, guy comes back in. Hey, man, you got to go. Our guy's going to be here at noon. I'm like, noon? You're kicking me out of the gym at 7:04 because a guy's going to be here at noon? Yeah, we got to kick you out. I'm telling you, man, that security is no joke. I'm anticipating that it's going to be a pain in the ass for Knicks fans to get in there. What might not be a pain in the ass is the game itself. The Knicks have an opportunity to go up 3-0. Can they actually do it? We'll break down the game and how I think Game 3 plays out when we get back. I'm Denton Day. I'm sitting in for Josh Graham at the Denton Day on Twitter. We're back with your phone calls as well. 310-840-4910. It's Westwood One Sports.
The cover star of Madden NFL 27 has been released, and it's Chicago Bears quarterback Caleb Williams. Yo, fans in the Windy City, is this a good thing? The third-year quarterback is on Madden Curse Watch. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
310-840-4910 at the Denton Day on Twitter. Let's get to some of your phone calls. We've talked about Brandon Aiyuk. We've talked about Game 3 of the NBA Finals. You can take this in whichever direction that you choose. 310-840-4910. That's our talk and our text line. Let's start with Russ in Illinois. Wants to chime in on Brandon Aiyuk. Russ, what's up, man? You're on Westwood One Sports.
Hey, thanks for having me. I have some questions of you.
Of course.
How do you know that Brandon Aiyuk can still play? Second question is, how do you know that Washington really wants him? And thirdly, if indeed there was some sort of conspiracy against him by the San Francisco 49ers, wouldn't you think the Players Association would be stepping into this in regards to player not being able to apply his trade? I suspect you're defending a malingerer.
So I'll answer all of those, Russ. The first one is we have no idea if he can still play. So I think that's a fair question. We have no idea. The assumption is that he can. I mean, he tore his knee up. He's 28 years old, and it's 2026. Medical technology leads me to believe that you can still play wide receiver with a torn-up knee if you've given it time to recover. An example of this is that Stephon Diggs did that last year, had over 1,000 yards at the age of 32 recovering from a bad knee. So I don't know that I would completely count him off because he tore his knee up. We're past that point. In terms of the conspiracy element of this, I'm glad you asked because, buddy, do I love me a good conspiracy. The NFL Players Association not stepping in on this is a win for the San Francisco 49ers. But here's my thought process on this, and I'll walk you through it. You don't sound like a Brandon Aiyuk guy, that's fine. But if he doesn't want to be there, there's not a lot that the Players Association can necessarily do. What you would go to the Players Association for, more often than not, is getting the money back. You're like, hey, I feel like this was an unfair void of my contract. I want to play here. I want this money. Can you get it back? And what they would do was they would fight this, and they would probably get some of it back. I don't know that the Players Association would get all of it back, but they would get some of it back. So that's kind of the direction that you would go if you wanted to still be there. But I think with him, he doesn't want to be there. There's a relationship that has been severed. It's bad. It's nasty. The two sides don't like each other. That's very clear. Regardless of which side that you stand on right now, I think all of us meet in the middle when they say this is real bad blood between the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk. So he doesn't want to be there anymore. I don't know that the Players Association can get him out of the contract. They could get money back if he still wanted to be there. I don't know what power they would have to be like, no, you actually have to release him. Because if the NFL had that power, there would be a lot more guys doing it. So they're not going to grant that power. And honestly, I don't think that they should. This is a very weird and odd and rare case in that we're seeing unfold right now. And again, he's not like the hero in this. Brandon Aiyuk has handled himself very poorly in certain areas. But I do feel like when you get only information for the better part of a year from one side, there is a reason for that. And that's the side that's playing offense in the story. The side that's giving us all of the information and dictating the narrative of the story, that's often not the hero. They might be the winners because the winners always write history, but that doesn't make them the hero in the story. They have done something in this that has led to Brandon Aiyuk being upset with them. He's not the first person that has ever been upset with the way that San Francisco negotiates, with the way that San Francisco handles things. There's been a number of players before him, and there will be a number of players after him that get upset with that front office. They've just never taken it to these lengths.
And then your final question that was actually your second question, I'm just getting to it last. He's best friends with a quarterback in Washington. And I don't anticipate everybody to know this because you're not in the D.C. area. The power of friendship as it relates to Jaden Daniels gets you pretty darn far. Sam Hartman still has a job. If you watch Sam Hartman in the preseason in 2025, it was some of the worst quarterback play you've ever seen. He's still on the roster, and he's on the roster because he's friends with Jaden Daniels. On top of that, Adam Peters knows him. So if Adam Peters is sitting here understanding, and he's been in the building when San Francisco negotiates, in fact, Adam Peters took a 49er tactic into the offseason last year with Terry McLaurin's contract, and it completely derailed the season. Like from the jump, Washington's season was always going to be off because for all of training camp, their number one wide receiver wasn't there. There was this dark cloud that was over the offseason. So I think Adam Peters might have turned from that San Francisco way of negotiating, understanding there are better ways to do this. I'm not doing this the best way. So if he knows Brandon Aiyuk and has a positive relationship with him, and Jaden Daniels knows Brandon Aiyuk, who has a positive relationship with him, because clearly, this is a big deal, then I don't see why Washington would not be interested. 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. You want to jump in with us here on Westwood One Sports? Let's go to Todd. Todd's in Tampa. Wants to jump in here. Todd, what's going on?
Boss, let's get down to business here.
Let's get
I
down.
want to say, growing up in the Big Apple, okay, before I moved as a kid to Florida, when my parents made me move down here, there's two people who made New York. One was Donald Trump and the other was Joe Namath, okay? I was 5 years old when Joe Namath guaranteed it, and everyone ran to the window and put money on it, and Joe and my dad said, I said, Dad, why is everyone running to put money up on the Jets? He said, Joe Namath guaranteed we're going to win the game. He said we're going to win it outright. Everybody piled their money, and that's why Joe Namath and the 69 Jets are even greater than my Miracle Mets, because Joe Namath let everybody eat at the table. That's the beauty of him. And then Donald Trump building skyscrapers, putting Woolman Rink when the mayor couldn't get it done, and spent $20 million, a joke over there in New York City, and he built it in 6 months and on time and under budget. Donald Trump was the man, and he put up skyscrapers, and everybody knew he was boss. And in the 80s, there wasn't a better looking white boy in America. So I'm happy that let me say something to my Knicks. You're up 2-0. Okay, step on their throat and put them away. Step on their throat and put them away, and don't give them a chance to breathe. You got to hit the boards and play defense. You understand me? Don't worry about the referees. Don't worry about nothing. Just step on their throat like you did in San Antonio and put them away. Michael Jordan would close you out in 6. He didn't want to wait. They take no chances, and we're closing you out. We're putting you down, and we're winning this title. I want to say that. I want to say to my Buccaneers and Ruben Bain, we're counting on you. Baker,
Wait, how are you a
Baker,
Bucks fan? You're a New York guy and a Bucks fan?
We moved to Tampa when I was after '73 when the Mets lost to the A's. Broke my heart. And we moved down here, and I'm a Buccaneer since 1976. My first job was selling Cokes at the old Sombrero, and then we came from 0-26 from worst to first with Doug Williams, who should be in the Hall of Fame, by the way, threw 4 touchdown passes in the second quarter for the Washington Redskins at the time, and won the first Super Bowl as African American. So he should be in the Hall before anybody. Let me say to my Buccaneers, Ruben Bain has electrified this city, and we're ready to roll with Ruben Bain. Got to pay Baker. Baker, make sure you slide before you get hit, unless you're in the playoffs. And since A.J. Brown has left, I see a window open. I see the Buccaneers versus the Rams in the NFC Championship game, and I find us with a way to get it done and knock Matthew Stafford out of the game. I'll talk to you later, baby. Peace. Go Knicks.
Thank you, Todd. So that was a fun ride. I don't know has Ruben Bain electrified Tampa? He hasn't played yet. I like the passion, though. It feels like he is a part of the team, right? He is ready for the New York Knicks. And I like the history lesson, too. I don't know that he knows that I'm from D.C., which is fine. Not everybody does. I'm very aware of the Doug Williams thing. I do believe that Doug Williams, I don't know if they should be in the Hall of Fame, but he's a very, very special player, and that should be celebrated. As far as the game itself goes, game number 3, I'm expecting San Antonio to win. I'm expecting a bounce-back performance from the Spurs, and I think they quiet a very raucous crowd in New York. It's going to be a fun one. There's going to be a whole lot of back and forth. I don't think this series to me has already been better than what San Antonio and Oklahoma City was, despite that being viewed as the impromptu championship, because all of those losses were by double digits, with the exception of like one or two. But even the double overtime thriller was nearly a double-digit win. These games are coming way more down to the wire, and that's what I want. If this doesn't go 7, I'd love it to go 7. If it doesn't go 7, but we get games that all come down to the final 2 minutes of play, I'm okay with that. That's the kind of basketball that I want. I've always been a fan of the NBA playoffs being the highest level of basketball. You know, we argue from time to time on these airwaves, March Madness versus the NBA postseason. I love the thrill of March Madness, the crack hit that it is in the first few days of the tournament. But when it comes to high-level basketball, you don't find anything better than the NBA. And what we've seen through the first 2 games is we've seen the Knicks playing at a very, very high level and San Antonio doing their best to try and keep up. My expectation is for game number 3 that we actually see them set the pace and set the tone and then not blow it and not give the game away to the Knicks in the second quarter the way that they did. Because the second quarter play for San Antonio, that was the moment that I was scared for the first time in this series as somebody that's been backing the Spurs. I was scared because New York rose to the occasion of the physicality. And it felt like San Antonio was like, hey, why are they allowed to get away with all of this? And somebody got to stick their foot up the ass of the Spurs to be like, that is not how this is going to go moving forward. You need to be the ones that are the aggressors. You need to be the ones that are the attackers. And I'm expecting that Victor Wembanyama, more than anybody, is going to be that guy. He shot 6 threes in game number 2. That needs to be limited to 3 in game number 3. But I still want him taking 25 to 30 shots. If Victor Wembanyama takes 30 shots and only 3 of them are three-pointers, the Spurs are going to win. Because that means he is playing with aggressiveness. He's playing dominant down low. He's not afraid of Mitchell Robinson. He's not afraid of Karl Anthony Towns. These guys are 2 bodies that he hasn't really seen a lot of. They're strong. They're not afraid of him. I need him not to be afraid of them. But if he plays a game where he only shoots 3 three-pointers, but he takes 30 shots, he's going for at least 35 points, and you're probably reaching 12, 14 rebounds. He needs to be better at the rebounds. He cannot be out-rebounded by Cat. Again, he had like 9 rebounds in game number 2 compared to Cat's 13. That can't happen. The effort was not there. I need to see the wake-up call. Victor Wembanyama said that he let himself get a little drained after the Western Conference Finals, and I think somewhere Kevin Garnett was on a couch like the Leo DiCaprio meme, pointing at the television and being like, I told you so. Because Kevin Garnett ripped him a new one earlier in the week. Why are you crying after the Western Conference Finals? You haven't done anything yet. The goal is still ahead of you. All of these things, right? Wemby admitted that, and I'm hoping that he's used the next few days, and even using a part of today, to zone in. Let's meditate. I don't know what monks do. I'm not well-versed in the art of being a monk. I don't have history there. I would assume that they meditate in some capacity. If you're going to do the hanging out with the monks, and the story that was, and we have articles about it, we have pictures about it, and it's a cool thing that he did. Not everybody has that, but that's a cool thing that he got to do. If you're going to do the monk thing, let's center in here for game number 3, because if you go down 0-3, you're getting swept. If you go down 0-3, the series is over in 4. You are not beating the Knicks in game 4 in Madison Square Garden. It's not going to happen. It's just not. If you go down 0-3, the series is over. If you win this thing, now we're cooking with a little bit of gas. And now you can win that second one. And now it's 2-2. And don't let it get back to San Antonio with this series 2-2, with San Antonio having all of the momentum. It's not going to be a good spot if you're the Knicks. It's just not. Because what that means is that Karl Anthony Towns, in games number 1 and game number 2, that version of him is not the same Karl Anthony Towns that we'd be seeing in game number 3 and game number 4. That means they found something out. They being the Spurs, they found something out about him that they've now decided to take advantage of. My expectation is that San Antonio is going to win game number 3. I'm taking them plus the points at plus 2.5. I'm taking them on the money line. Shop it around. I'm seeing money line San Antonio plus 110. You might be able to find it at plus 115. Likely not going to find any better odds for the gambler than that. But I'm taking San Antonio on the money line. I think they get this thing to 2-1. I think Victor Wembanyama goes crazy. I'm saying at least 35 points for Wemby in game number 3. And he swings the pendulum back, the crazy pendulum that has been the narrative around him, because, man, that thing is going back and forth with the way that people are flipping and flopping on the dude. I think he swings that pendulum back, and I think he reminds everybody, hey, there's a reason why all of you thought that we were going to be the initial winners of the series. I really am like that. So I think Victor Wembanyama gets it done. I'm Denton Day. I'm sitting in for Josh Graham here on Westwood One Sports. When we get back, we will wrap this show up, put this show to bed. Our producer, Will Dalton, will help us do so. Don't go anywhere. It's Westwood One Sports.
Wow, wow, whoa. The Knicks are up 2-0. New York stole 2 games in San Antonio. The next 2 are in the Garden with a chance to sweep. Game 3 of the NBA Finals is tomorrow night. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
At the Denton Day on Twitter, I'm reading as we're getting back from break that the mothership is planning an alternate broadcast for Game 3 of the NBA Finals, led by Pat McAfee. When he does alternate broadcast for football, I kind of get it. This came out of left field, man. Maybe Pat McAfee is for you. He's not necessarily for me all the time. Not an alternate broadcast guy. Show I think is halfway decent, but alternate broadcast guy, I think I'm all right with that one. At the Denton Day on Twitter, we do have a text message that I just think is funny, and I wanted to read. It comes from Tim in Virginia. He says in all caps, Aiyuk talk is lazy. Stop this. It's been the same for 2 years. Stop it. I guess he didn't know that Brandon Aiyuk actually posted on social media addressing some things for the first time in 2 years. So, Tim, that was why we were talking about Brandon Aiyuk. He basically dared his team to release him so he could then take belt to ass against his current, soon-to-be former team. I would say that is a little bit of a change in sort of the lead-up to the NFL season in this Brandon Aiyuk saga, but that's just me. That's on me. Maybe you disagree with that. I'm also seeing Mark Medina reporting that SeatGeek is saying that the 3 games that are available to be played in Madison Square Garden for the NBA Finals, assuming this goes to 7, have outpriced every single Super Bowl except for Super Bowl 58. And I have to tell you, that does not deserve to be celebrated. You're pricing out the common fan, the people that actually watch the Knicks on a regular basis, the people that are like deep into the weeds, the kids that Timothée Chalamet once was when he's hanging out in the blogs. You're pricing all of them out so you can get the Hollywood elite of people in New York in the building because they have an extra $10,000 that they can pay to sit in the 400 section. I'm not celebrating that. And that might be cool if you're like a business person. I'm not celebrating that element. That part of capitalism sucks. I don't like pricing people out that actually deserve, that have been through the ringer with the Knicks for 50 years. Now they don't get to go watch, so a bunch of rich people can. It's disgusting. Makes me want to throw up. What doesn't make me want to throw up is putting this show to bed. To help us do so, we welcome in the great producer, the esteemed producer of the program, WD, a.k.a. Will Dalton, a.k.a. Roadhouse. Is there any other nicknames?
I got a lot of nicknames.
Yeah, you got a lot of nicknames, but he's with us here. What's up, Will?
Dude, I'm excited for this game tomorrow night. I saw for game 2, apparently, some dude on the second floor of his apartment building, like he took out a projector. And for people that were outside the apartment building that I guess could not watch the game, he put the projector like on the side of some big like U-Haul truck, and he just had the game going. Dude, it's New York fans are different.
I mean, that's New York AF right there. Like you can't do that in most cities in the country, but in New York, if you've ever been to New York, which I realize as someone that lives like 4 hours from it, not everybody does. So I've been there a few times. Maybe other people, it's a little bit more of a trek. You can literally get away with anything there. Like within reason, you can just get away with anything, and people just look at you and be like, "Well, that's New York." Like that's how New York operates.
Well, and I'm wondering, like, even though they've said, like, all these watch parties can't happen outside tomorrow, they're going to still happen, right?
I mean,
they're going to happen. Like, they're going to find a way.
Are you going to start, like, rubber bulleting thousands of Knicks fans in the streets? That's not going to go over well. I can promise you.
I saw people getting tackled after game 2. I saw it.
I did see that.
It was getting ugly.
Some frustrations there with the NYPD and the people, but you're not going to rubber bullet everybody out there. Like, eventually, there's just more Knicks fans than there are NYPD officers. So the watch parties are going to happen. It's just a matter of how close do they get to Madison Square Garden.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Let's put this thing to bed. How about that?
Let's put this thing to bed.
All right. So it's going to be crazy in New York tomorrow, but where crazy things happen on the regulars down in Florida.
Yeah.
As we tend to know around here. So apparently some dude he just recently got 11 months in jail because he tried to rob a bank.
Classic.
Now, how he went about it is the interesting part of the story. It wasn't like, hey, stick him up with the mask on and everything. It wasn't like that. He's first of all, he stole an excavator, one of those machines.
That's a good start.
He did that, and what he did in the middle of the night, or sometime late at night, is he tried to take said excavator and, like, rip up the ATM machine that was outside of the bank. Yeah. So he does this, and the added wrinkle to it is this particular bank was right next to the police station. Which is, one, smart on the part of the bank, like whoever decided, hey, this
prime
is the
bank
spot.
real estate.
Yeah. Like, this is the spot right next to the police station. So they arrive very quickly. And apparently the reason he did this is because he didn't want to work for his brother. He didn't go into what his brother does, but I can imagine working with your sibling might be a little difficult.
That is important to the story. You know, like, what does the brother do? If he's like the owner of like a window business, this might be extreme. But if he's in some nefarious activities, maybe this is actually a win. So that is an important key to the story there. How did he only get 11 months? Like what you just described, I'm not a lawyer, but it feels like a lot of things that would add up to more than 11 months.
I don't know. It is interesting because when I read this story, like 11 months for trying to rob a bank seems kind of...
With a stolen equipment vehicle.
Yeah.
It's not like you stole a regular car. You stole like an excavator where you need to have a license to operate. So there's like a lot of things that are being broken, metaphorically and literally, in this story.
Now, I mean, maybe the fact that nobody was injured or nobody was killed or anything like that, because that'll tack on.
Did he successfully rip the ATM off?
I'm looking at the pictures here. He didn't get it off, but he did some damage. He ripped it up pretty good, but not all the way.
So what is a dumber crime to commit? Stealing an excavator and trying to rip off an ATM at a bank that's located right next to a police station, or driving in front of a San Francisco 49ers stadium while recording yourself with a speedometer visible going over 100 miles an hour?
I mean, they're both pretty dumb.
They're both hard to beat. I didn't think we'd have two crimes on the show that are so obvious L's in court, but here we are.
Dude, for the first crime is probably the worst of the two. I'll say that, or the dumbest of the two.
The dumbest of the two.
Because you're right next to the police station and you're making all this noise.
Did you not see it? You didn't do any recon before the operation?
But I gotta tell you, like, this Brandon Aiyuk situation, it just gets me because, like, I remember a couple of years back when the contract negotiations were happening and he was holding out, I think, and, he wanted X amount of dollars. And there were people saying, like, this isn't going to end well. But they paid him. They paid him anyway. And, like, do they have anything to show for it, really, production-wise or anything?
Nope, they got 7 games. 7 games, and he blew his knee out, and he wasn't even spectacular in the 7 games, which usually, not all the times, but is usually what happens when
you hold out for the entire offseason and go do a bunch of podcasts. Like, that's not a productive way to spend the offseason. I'm just holding to the hope that his friendship with Jaden Daniels heals his brain and heals his knee. And we just get him to the spot.
I was about to say, do the Commanders want these problems? Like, you're there, you're in D.C.
Is like you're probably going to get what I would imagine is a 2-year deal. That's really a 1-year deal, but it gives the organization the leverage to where if they want to extend him after that, if he does play well, then they can do that. That's how I imagine this going. Not going to be for a lot of money. They're not going to give him $30 million a year. I mean, those days he got to earn that one again. The problem is he's now 28 years old, and we'd see once you get to that 29, close to 30 mark, teams ain't want to give you $30 million a year. So he is putting happiness in front of $30 million. And I will tell you, there are not a lot of things that make me happier than $30 million. There's a few, but there is not one of them. And I've told my friends this. We are homies. I don't love you enough to turn down $30 million. That's it for me on a Sunday. The great, the legendary Mike Wickett is going to take over at the top on Westwood One Sports. Big thanks to Will Dalton. Big thanks to Art in our Culver City studios. Hit me up on Twitter at The Denton Day. Mike Wickett next on Westwood One Sports.
This is Westwood One Sports.